welcome to my channel. We're gonna eat our way through books. So that means I'm gonna eat every food item that appears in a book. I wasn't sure where to start, so I picked up Sally Rooney's Beautiful World, Where Are You? I've never read her before, so let me know what you think about her in the comments. The only thing I knew going into this book is that Sally Rooney is kind of like millennial, little depressed. So let's see if the food stacks up with that. I did want to say, like, right off the bat, my channel is going to be full of spoilers. I hate when I watch a book video because I want to understand what happened in a book and they don't tell me what happened in the book and it's just an ad for the book. I do not work for Sally Rooney. I do not work for Picador. I'm going to tell you what I think and I'm going to tell you the end. Stop watching if you don't want to know. Before we get into the content of the video, which is going to be a food challenge, I want to talk a little bit about the book itself. We basically follow two couples. There's Alice. She's a writer living in rural Ireland. She meets this guy, Felix, on a dating app. He works in a warehouse. They kind of hate each other, but they date anyway for some reason. Simultaneously, Alice is emailing with her best friend, Eileen. These like excruciatingly pretentious emails to each other. My heart goes out to anyone who had to suffer through those emails. It was excruciating. Eileen has this like extremely long running will they won't they thing with her best friend, friends with benefits guy, Simon. And basically the two couples are navigating their relationships, and what ties them together is the emails between Alice and Eileen. At the end, finally, all four characters come together. There's a beautiful dinner scene. They fight, they make up. The end. Let's dig in.
Here's the full banquet spread of all the food in this book. One rule I made for myself is not to duplicate food items, so if something appears multiple times in the book, like wine, which you'll see, I'm only going to show it once on the banquet table. You can see right there's an apple on the inside cover, and Felix and Alex actually reunite in the grocery store by a display of apples, so apples definitely significant for the book. We have vodka, which appears 4 times. Felix drinks lager twice. Sandwiches are mentioned twice. Once they're described as ready-made, once as home-packed. It didn't specify a type of sandwich, so I made PB&J. Coffee shows up 5 times, and one of those times Simon orders for himself and Eileen, which definitely mimics the way he is the partner with more control in their relationship. There are also a few times where Alice or Eileen just eat plain bread or toast. Chocolate shows up twice, and I decided to use these fancy oat milk heart-shaped chocolates. Wine shows up 9 different times in all its permutations, as you can see. There's definitely way more drinking in this book than I was expecting. They drink at dinners, but also at parties and on dates. It's a major theme. There's a kind of interesting scene where Eileen is in Dublin with some big city friends. They're waiting in line for 45 minutes, and when they finally get there, the burgers are just normal, and I feel like that letdown is pretty relatable. Whiskey pops up twice, both times it's Eileen's drink. Eileen's friend Paula has this grapefruit gin and tonic. It's supposed to be an enormous fishbowl glass. I just used the biggest wine glass that I could find. There's this line about Simon. After one iteration of his affair with Eileen comes to an end, it says, "She didn't hear anything from Simon again until he came over to her family home at Christmas to drink a glass of brandy and admire the tree," which I think that's great scene setting. You feel like you're there. Finally, we're at our first big meal. Alice and Felix, even though their first date is a flop, they decide to go to Italy together for their second date. I was hoping the food would get more exciting since we're in Italy, but it's really just this one meal. There's bread with olive oil and vinegar. Alice's pasta is described as pasta with cheese and pepper, which sounds to me like cacio e pepe, so I made a vegan version of that, and it was actually quite good. Felix has a steak with Parmesan and rocket leaves. I had to look up what rocket leaves are, and technically they're just arugula. I'm vegan, so I made a cauliflower steak, and I was pretty pleased with how it turned out. They drink water in this book. This meal is a girl dinner. Alice feeds herself in Italy, which is pretty underwhelming, but she's in the middle of a fight with Felix, so maybe that's why she was eating so minimally. I will say I was expecting more tea, given this is an Irish book, but that might just be my own bias. Tea only shows up 3 times. Okay, I was really excited to see ice cream come up 3 times. I don't know if you can see the cup I have, but I have this cute little cup that looks just like an ice cream cone. It was lovely. Definitely one of my favorite food items from this book. There's a scene when Alice is reminiscing about her childhood by the seaside, and she remembers the sting of vinegar with sausage and chips. So I added some malt vinegar here, and it was pretty good. Eileen is at a party in Dublin, and this is the food that gets passed around at the party. It really reminds me of game day food here in America. She mentioned cocktail sausages, and I interpreted that as pigs in a blanket. There's potato wedges, and she also mentions wings glistening in wet sauce. I made cauliflower wings with a buffalo sauce, and it was good, but it was a little too spicy for me. This is the most significant meal of the book. Alice makes pasta with sauce, an apple crumble, and a salad that's described as glistening. Again, that word shows up more than once to describe food, which might mean something. Eileen has an awkward conversation about money with Alice's boyfriend Felix, and while they're doing it, Felix is eating yogurt and Eileen is eating some tangerines. Near the very end, Alice and Felix go to this party and they kind of make up after a big fight. Alice brings a sponge cake wrapped in cling film on a plate, so I made a sponge cake and I wrapped it in cling film and I put it on a plate. I never had sponge cake before, so I hope this turned out the way it was supposed to. And the very last item in the book is a bowl of crisps, which is just potato chips. So I did my best to make it through this giant meal. There's definitely plenty of leftovers I'll be eating throughout the week. Let me know which meal looked the best. Is there anything here you would actually try?
So something I noticed while I was reading this book is the characters really don't cook for themselves that much. And I think it kind of mirrors that sense of millennial malaise that you hear about in a lot of Sally Rooney books. When they're eating alone, they're eating very minimally, very blandly. There's not a lot of flavoring, there's not a lot of seasoning. And the way they speak is like that too. And anyone who's read Sally Rooney's books, there is a sense of blandness and this low level almost misery, I would say, all the characters feel, and you can really see that coming through in the food. I've tried my best to make this a fun video, but the food is really boring that they're eating, and I think that's actually a pretty good technique that Sally Rooney used to let you know how the characters are feeling. And I think also, since they never really feed themselves a meal, it makes that big dinner scene at the end even more powerful. All 4 characters finally come together in one room for the first time, and Alice makes this meal. She makes the fruit crumble, she makes the pasta, she makes the salad, which is glistening. Didn't have to mean so much, but it really does when you compare it to what she eats on her own. When she's home alone, she's not nourishing herself, and when she finally cooks for her friends, it stands out so much more against the backdrop. So I'm actually pretty happy that I picked Sally Rooney to be my first author for this Eating My Way Through Books series, because first of all, it was kind of easy since she's not eating a lot of complicated food, but I think Sally did a really good job of having the food in the book mimic the state of mind of her characters. It really put me into their miserable little lives, and I'm happy to never go back again. What did you think about the book? Was it good?